What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Ashley Friends here, and welcome to Chats with Ash, a new digital series where I chat with my favorite business besties and entrepreneurs and have them tell their story so y'all can learn what it really means to be a successful business owner and entrepreneur. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel to see all the episodes for the first season. What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Ashley Friends, and welcome to the first episode of Chats with Ash. I'm super excited, y'all. This vision, this project got put on my heart 3 years ago. It's been 3 years in the making, and we are finally here. I'm super excited. We have a special guest for the first episode, my girl, Ariana. Clap it up.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I know. I'm so excited. Like, literally, when I was like mapping all this out and all the pieces were like put into place for it to like come to fruition, God was like, she needs to be your first episode. This needs to be the first guest. And I'm like, okay, Lord, I know we want this to drop in June. Like, please let her not be in Europe somewhere. You know what I'm saying? In Africa, work, eat, listen, okay? I was like, please let her be here, or please let you want to do it. You know, sometimes you're in the space where it's like, I'm not even supposed to be doing interviews. I'm supposed to just like foot on necks, everything else, you know, et cetera. So I'm so happy that this worked out and we aligned. Because since I need to tell y'all about how we met, right? So I actually I was following her for a minute, and I forget who one of our friends connected. It was like, oh, you need to meet her, connect, have you? So we connected before I moved to Miami, and we were meeting for brunch. Literally, like, we both were just coming into the situation, like, okay, we're gonna meet for brunch. I don't know this person. Y'all, let me tell you how we had church in this establishment.
We did.
Y'all, we was praying, we was crying, we was having praise and worship, literally everything during this. And from there, we were like, oh my goodness, like, this was alignment. Like, we were supposed to meet at this time. And then a couple months after, I hit her up like, yo, I moved to Miami. And here we are. And I'm so thankful that we were able to meet. And because when you're on this journey as entrepreneurs, it's definitely hard to find people who just like values and everything you know, align. And I definitely think that's one of the core reasons why we became so cool, is that both of us in our entrepreneurship journey had to rely on faith so much to get through that and even have the audacity to take that leap. And that's really a lot about what I want to talk about today, because the place you are now is not where you started. So just to, you know, kick things off, I would love to know, before we even get into your business, before we even get into you like moving to Miami, what was your life like that before? Like, what was your passions, dreams, or like where were you working before that? Yeah,
such a good question. And first I have to do a super special shout out to Ashley, because when we first met, like, I remember when we were sitting on Miami Beach at that Italian restaurant, and I will never forget this. And you were like, when I move here, I want to do this. I want to work with this type of people. And literally, it was like 3 months later, you did everything. So I just want to say that, yeah, I'm just so excited for you and happy to be here on the show. And to answer your question, you know, before moving to Miami, honestly, so I would say so I'm 27 now. So the past like 10 years, I've been in the tech world in a variety of different roles. And immediately before moving to Miami, I was an entrepreneur. I had a different company at the time where I was doing a lot of consulting for small businesses, but I knew I just wanted to do like technology and like software development at a different level. And so that's what actually eventually ended up inspiring me to move to Miami. And there are tons of other details that I'm sure we'll get into. And I just knew that Miami was the place for me, kind of like when you made that leap as well of wanting to be in a new space, in a new city that was innovative and moving towards the future. So before Miami, I was an entrepreneur and just kind of looking for what's my next big thing. And I found it when I was here.
Yeah, so prior to moving to Miami, what was that time like for you, that time period of figuring out what is your next move? How did you figure out what your next move was? Like, what was that basically transition process for you?
Yeah, such a really good question. So before moving to Miami, I would say on a personal note, right, because before you can show up professionally, you are who you are personally. And I was actually in one of the lowest personal moments of my life, where I would say I was in a deep depression for like at least a year, where I really had a lot of questions around like, you know, what is the purpose that particularly like God has on my life? Because at the time I was like, so before this company, I was actually the CTO of a cannabis tech company in Michigan. And there were some, you know, business things that happened where, you know, co-founder issues, whatever. And I really, you know, took that hard, like any business owner does when you go in business partnerships with people. And I was at a crossroads of, okay, do I want to go out now and kind of start a new thing, discover and find a new city? Do I want to stay here in Michigan? And so I had to take a huge leap of faith. But it was that, I would say that chapter, that season was one of the lowest points in my life. And in regards to like how I made that transition, like we've already mentioned God like 3 times already, but I'm nothing without him. And I always give glory, honor, and praise, because like there were nights, I think for that year, I practically cried myself to sleep every single night. Because, and I'm sure there's someone listening to the show right now where they're trying to discover, who am I? Or maybe you're in the lowest moment of your life and you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna get out of this. And so some tangible strategies I use and vividly remember were a few things. One of them was, obviously praying and talking to God every day, but also 2, like one of my specific prayers I would ask is like, God, help me to see me the way you see me. And so when I started to pray that, I started to get like different creative visions and ideas around who's Ariana in 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years. So oftentimes when I talk to people, and people who really know me, they know that I think of life in a series of like decades. So not, even though my current situation was wild, and at the time I don't know if you even know this story, but I actually moved to Miami with like $250 to my name. Like it was just, financially I was going through a lot. Spiritually I was in a depression. And then now I'm trying to figure out, what city I want to live in and what's going to be that next move. And so I think what grounded me in that transition phase was seeing and truly believing that I can be who Ariana will be in the year 2050 and 2040, 2030, and 2023. So that was how I kind of navigated.
So I want to talk about when you were saying you were at your lowest point, because I was talking to a friend the other day, and she's like, one thing's for certain, I may be down, but I'm not down for long. And I was telling her, well, you have to go down to go up.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, if you think about it like physically, to jump high, your body legit has to like go down. And then the next day I was watching a sermon, and literally he was preaching, you have to go down to go. Like literally the same thing I was having a conversation about. And I was like, okay, God, like, should I be in the pulpit next? What's up? No, I'm just kidding.
Listen, be careful what you ask for, for real.
So I was just like, oh my goodness, that's so crazy. And I feel like a lot of times God allows us to exhaust all our options so we don't have any other choice. Because sometimes when we have a choice of him or something else that's semi-good, it's just like, oh, okay, I'm gonna take this because it's easier, I'm gonna take this. But I feel like a lot of times he allows us, especially the business owners, like, okay, exhaust all your options, go through everything until you're literally at that point where you have nothing else. And the only option is to seek him. And I feel like sometimes he puts us through that to remind us when we do get to those points when we're up, to remind us that it's not us. Like we're literally just a temple. We're literally just a vessel being used for him. Because if not, and we had other options and we chose other options, we may start to think, well, I got here because of hard work, and I got here because I'm naturally gifted, or I got here because of genetics, or I got here because people put me on. So I feel like a lot of times he definitely puts us through those situations where where it's like we have to rely on him. You know what I mean? So I definitely did just want to touch on that. But I also want to talk about you actually moving to Miami, because you said you had like less than $300 to your name. Like, what was that experience like for you moving to Miami with not having the financial stability people will say, whether it's with your friends, significant other, your family? Like, what were their thoughts around doing that?
So, and there's so many different angles that I can touch on this, because reflecting on it, there are a lot of ways I felt like I definitely could have done it differently. I'll speak of it from the transparent perspective though. So, I think oftentimes when you're used to being the superhero, you always think you have to save yourself. And then I think that's a big lesson I definitely learned in the last 2 years of like, oftentimes we try to put ourselves in the position where God is supposed to be in regards to situations. So I was very silent and very quiet, and my family didn't even know that I didn't have that like much money, right? Because I'm thinking, okay, I'm just gonna figure it out myself. I don't want to borrow things from friends and family. And also there's certain situations and seasons in your life where it's also not everybody's business to know what you're going through. Only
let's
pause. Yeah,
let's not brush over that, because in the age of social media, a lot of times we feel as though we have to voice every single thing we do while we do it, and people be preying on your downfall. So it's like, how are you able to have that discernment to know when to keep to yourself and when to let people know what it is you're doing? Because people, it is go show the journey X, Y, and Z, but how do you know about that? Like,
this is such a good question, because during that time in my life, no one would have been able to guess what I was going through. Like to be specific and clear, when I moved to Miami, like that first 3 weeks, like I was eating off $10 to $12 a week, like eggs, rice, and then like I had like a free basket of fruit that this amazing Haitian woman who was my neighbor, she would like give me, because she had all these extra fruits and vegetables, and she was like, "Girl, you look a little skinny. Like you need to, put
yes, aunties always be looking out. One thing about Black older women, you don't even have to say anything. Yeah. They just know. Like it's that wisdom, it's that discernment. They can look in your eyes like, baby, let me make you a plate. We're like, yes, please, I'm hungry.
Exactly, yeah. So during that season, no one would have been able to guess like what I was going through. Like actually at the time, it's funny, it's sunsetted now, but I think this was 2 years ago. So this was 2021 when I moved to Miami. That was also, at the time I had like a podcast, which is sunsetted now, but it was called Women in Tech with Ariana. And it was like the third like largest like women in tech podcast in like the world. Yeah. Right. So, and in so many different countries that we charted and all that good stuff, and listeners from, I think, 15 plus countries. And so no one would have been able to guess like, this girl, who's talented is going through this, rough time. And so I think for me, especially when you have a brand that's public, right? I know you can relate to this. You have to be careful about what information you share, right? Because people are preying on your downfall. But also, I think the bigger thing is you want to make sure that you have the right opinions in your life, right? Because with social media, and even if you have 12 advisors, that's great. But how do you know that, you're truly leaving space and time to clearly hear God's voice, but also like that inner circle? And so for me, it was always, even for my inner circle, I have requirements. Like, if you don't have the same faith values, if we don't have, the same morals and like, visions and goals about our future, there's certain things you would even never know about me. Right. And so I kind of definitely had to move, like that, and very strategically, especially during those low moments. Everyone doesn't deserve to know, but also I'll play devil's advocate with myself and say it is important, especially for Black women, to, ask for help. Like I should have asked for help. Right. And, now that my parents, and, the story about me moving here with $250 is like in articles and news, and that's great. But I remember my parents, they were like, I wish you would have told me. I would have tried to figure it out, even though, they wouldn't have been able to afford my rent or something like that. But yeah, I would say if you are someone that's listening to this right now and you're trying to figure out, how to navigate, definitely, look at, maybe there's at least 3 people in your life where you can say, hey, I'm really going through this thing and I need support. So I wish I would have done that, but I didn't. Right. But I made it out, and your girl's killing it.
Yes. It's hard, man, especially that complex of like with Black women. It's like we're the superheroes. We're the one that saves everybody. And like, oh, you're strong. You can get through it. You can push through. I'm going to pray for you. Though I love the prayers, please forever, and like pray for me, yes. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like with us growing up with that complex, we feel weak. We feel like, that we didn't make it or what have you. So it's so hard. But I do love this new era. Some people may not like it. Some people do, of the soft girl era of us like asking for what we want and making like having our voice heard and stuff like that. So I'm really happy you said that, because I feel like sometimes people love to push this narrative of like, I got it out the mud. Right. And it's not that we want to get out the mud. It's just what we had to do. It wasn't like a choice. Like I want my life to be harder. But it's a lot of times with resources, and maybe you don't even feel in a safe space to ask for people. We don't really have that luxury. So I definitely love the point you made of like, even if you are going through something with those close friends, pray that you have a safe space. And if you do, like, don't be afraid to ask for it, because that's what your tribe is there for. They're there to like support and guide you, et cetera. So I'm really happy, that you mentioned that. And also a point you made in regards to like hearing other people's voices, right? Because I always tell people, what God tells you isn't a conference call. He told it to you. That's good. And a lot of times he didn't make the vision clear for everybody else. He made the vision clear for you. He said it in a way for you to understand it. So a lot of times when we may tell social media or tell our friends or what have you, they'll be like, girl, that's dumb. Like, you moving to Miami with no money and it costs $1 bajillion for a banana? Like, what?
It's so real. Bananas, by the way, were not in my budget.
Right.
Like, I'm not kidding.
It's like, what are you doing? So I think for me, when I first started my business, I was more vocal, like when I quit my job and all this other stuff. And because I had such the backlash and negativity from like my parents, from my like close friends, what have you, moving forward, whenever I do things, I never announce it. I literally always just tell people like, oh, hey, like months later after it's executed, I did this or I did this. You know what I mean? So I definitely feel you, because that negativity can push you into depression. It can mess with your mental.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, it's so interesting. Like, even like with social media, I'm very careful about what pages I follow. Like, I'm very, you know, and some people think, oh, it's a follower count thing to look cool. I'm like, no, like what you expose yourself to, the type of information, even the music you listen to, the podcast, like even if it's a 15, 20, 30-second clip, you don't know what that person's intent is. You don't know what they, you know, all that good stuff. So I'm very particular about, you know, where I source information and knowledge, and, you know, my advisory board that I have professionally, but I also even have a personal advisory board of people who, you know, they've known me for some time, or maybe they're newer in my life and we have similar, you know, morals and values, and they're the people in my life where I'm like, hey, I trust you to check me and be like, Ariana, get off your high horse, or you slacking on this, like you need to up it up. So those two things have definitely helped me navigate difficult situations.
I'm the same way, because I feel like I treat social media like business. So for me, I go on, post, do my business, and then that's it. Like, I consume funny stuff like memes and videos and stuff like that, but like I'm really big on not making sure I don't get validation from social media. You know what I mean? Or I don't look to that to validate me, because I was actually friends before, during, and after, you know, social media, if that whole thing ever ends. And like you said, even when it comes to like news, every day there's some crazy stuff going on, or just people's toxicity, or someone trying to bait you into an argument. Like I'll catch myself sometimes, I'm like, why are you even responding? Like this does not matter. Like this comment, this person, like, not saying people don't matter in general, but to the pretense, it doesn't matter. So just delete it and block it. It's really not worth, you know, going back and forth. So I definitely think that's important, because a lot of times in this age of social media, we can get so consumed and wrapped up in thinking that's the end all be all. You want to make sure that you're doing a reset and kind of reevaluating. Like, I know some people do it yearly, some people do it quarterly, about like, who are the people around you closest? You know what I mean? Like, are they supporting you? Are they pouring into you? Or are they bringing you down? What is the music you listen to? Like, granted, y'all know I love you, City Girls. Shout out to Carisha and JT. But, you know, there's certain things where it's like, okay, I make sure, like, before 12, I listen to gospel music. That's like, you know, what I at minimum give myself, you know, et cetera. Like, what are the things you're watching on TV? Like you said, the podcast, et cetera. So I really think it's a point you want to make sure to reset, especially as a business owner and entrepreneur, because that can all weigh you down. And then also looking at other business owners and entrepreneurs too. Certain people I had to unfollow, because I caught myself trying to compare myself to this person. Like, well, why haven't I made $1 million of yet? Or why I don't have this yet? Why I don't have that yet? And it's like, yo, everyone has their time. You know what I'm saying? So I also want to talk with you about that as well, in regards to like comparison during that time. Did you struggle with that, seeing maybe some of your peers who were succeeding or farther when you were going through that struggle period?
You know, so I would say some years ago, I would say like definitely high school, like jealousy was a really bad, like I was like really struggled with that. Whether it was like because somebody was smarter, prettier, more talented, whatever, what have you. But I would say, you know, in regards to like that most recent transition to Miami, in the last like, I would say 6 to 7 years, I'm so glad that I've, you know, kind of healed from that journey, I would say. Only because like I am so passionate, and I truly believe that I am going to be exactly what God told me that I'm going to be, and all the visions and the creativity and like the plans I have to change the world through like software development. Like, I know like that's what I'm going to do, period, whether I knew the people in this room or not. And so because I'm obsessed with bringing that to life, I am so excited to help and support other women, you know what I mean? Or men, or whatever, other people's visions. And it's because like I realize now that this is a lifetime's work that I'm committing to. And so because I'm passionate about that, it's easy for me to like, you know, do life or partnerships or business with other people, even people who are in my industry. Like there are other competing companies or people who do similar stuff to me, and I'm like, you know, how can I introduce you to an investor, or like, you know, what type of sponsors do you need for your event? So thankfully I don't deal with that now, but I think if I had to give advice to someone who does, like maybe you're listening to this show, I would say definitely, you know, one, therapy is good. Let's start there. Therapy, if you're not in therapy, do therapy. That changed my life. Did 2 years of therapy, that totally changed my life. And then I would say really try to ask yourself, like, you know, what is it in this marathon of life that I truly want to accomplish? What are the steps to get there? And if you fall in love with that, you don't even care. Like I'm driving in my lane, and I'm just like, everybody has their own path. Like maybe, yeah, I'm a person is supposed to make $1 million this year, but if you're so focused on them, you don't even know your path could be doing 10 million next year, right? So like, I think like when you look at life from that perspective, it also releases and takes away the burden, right? Of what are we truly here on this earth for? You know what I mean? It really humbles you, and you get to learn to understand like other people's opinions don't matter. Now that doesn't mean you won't be afraid or you won't be scared, or there are moments where you're like, dang man, they killing it. Because let's be clear, I'm a businesswoman. Like I'm trying to crush the competition.
1 + 1 is
like,
equal to 2 over here.
Okay, and it may be 4. Okay, so this is 4. So let's be clear, your girl's competitive. But you know, I'm competitive in the sense of how do I outbeat Ariana from 2 months ago? And so it was so interesting. I love your point that you made regarding, you know, looking at your friend group and your relationships in your life, or even your advisors, and you're like, hey, you know, 6 months ago, maybe this relationship was beneficial for me, but maybe it's not, or maybe there's a different capacity that we bring to each other because, you know, everyone has different needs or whatever. And so I think constantly having that self-awareness of where are you, where do you want to be, and who are those 5 closest people to your life, reevaluating that will literally change you 100%. Because especially as an entrepreneur, and if you're in the tech world, this industry changes not exaggerating, every month. There was just an update this morning about the SEC that I had to send to my attorneys. Literally from like yesterday. There's a difference. So, you know, I think from that perspective, I kind of always have to be on my, you know, toes in regards to, you know, where am I at, and is this still in alignment for the future?
I love the analogy in driving, because if you're focused on someone else's lane, you're going to crash every time. So it's like, that's why people just be like, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. It's not like a diss or like talking down on people, but like you said, if you're so focused on 4 lanes over, even the lane next to you, your car is going to literally swerve. There's no way like around it. So I definitely think that's a super important thing to make. It's like focus on what you're supposed to be doing. And yes, of course, you can look and see and learn from people, et cetera, but making sure you're focused on your ultimate goal. Because like you said, you never know what your end journey it is. So I kind of want to fast forward. Okay, so you moved to Miami, you know, you're going through this rough period. How were you, or what was that process from the struggle period to kind of getting out of that and seeing your first light of success after moving to Miami?
Yeah, no, I love this question so much, and I get it often. I would say like, this was like the pinnacle moment. I think that if there's nothing else that a person gets from listening to this episode today, it's that, you know, life will continue to happen, and really the ultimate question that you have to ask, whether you're in the highest of your high or the lowest of your lows, is like, you know, you have to choose your hard. Like, it's hard for me to be disciplined and have these goals and want to be this person in 20, 10, 30, 50 years. But it's also a hard decision to like not push forward towards what could be and then have to look back on what could have been.
Ooh,
right?
And you 60 years old regretting and bitter.
Exactly.
Bitter.
And how many of those people have we met in our lives, right? Whether it was a stranger on the street, people in our family, whatever.
60, yes.
Yep, literally. So, that was something that was like very important. I'm sorry, I totally forgot.
No, it's okay. That point was lit. Okay. But I was just saying, like, what was that turning point for you from like the struggle period to like seeing your first like light of success?
Yeah, I would say at that point, which was literally that was like, if I had to choose a lowest moment in my life, that absolutely was. Personally, professionally, spiritually, all that good stuff. But I always knew though, right? Like all I had was like God. So me and God was still locked in, but I was like, yo, like this is hard.
Let's go. What's next?
And so what helped me in that moment, I had to make a decision of choosing the hard. And so what I remember it like it was yesterday, because it practically was 2 years ago, and it's wild to be sitting like right here in this chair today. Sometimes I like look back and I just like can get emotional, because like I'll spend, you know, $10 on a smoothie, you know, at living in Brickell or whatever, and I'm like, dang, this is what I was surviving off of 2 years ago. Like that was, that's a wild thing sometimes. That does hit me, and I'm forever grateful to God for that. But some tangible things, because I love for people to have actual steps that they can apply to their lives. Tangible things that helped me was, number one, you know, I moved to the city and I only knew 2 people, and I wasn't even that close to them. So I really was intentional about, okay, how can I find community, you know? So I think during that summer of 2021, I was hitting up at least 3 different networking groups a week. Like, you know, I was, you know, always trying to put myself out there. I used like Eventbrite and like Meetup.com are 2 specific tools that I even still use to this day to network and meet people. And I just always knew, like, you know, again, even though I'm at my rock bottom, I still have always believed. So like in 20 years, okay, when I'm being interviewed again by whoever, you know, the consistency that I'll say is that I always believed in who I was, although maybe emotionally or, you know, tangibly I didn't have those resources. Right. So because of that, I was always putting myself out there. And I knew I had the skill sets. I knew that eventually, like, I would come out of this. But sometimes, you know, you just go through seasons where it really does feel like the world is physically on your shoulders and you are carrying it strapped on your back to just get through the day or the morning or to get out the bed. And so speaking to that person who may be in the middle of a situation like that right now, I would say the biggest thing is having a couple of North Stars, but definitely, you know, identify as Christian, and having God at the center of everything really does help to motivate and get that joy back that you need. Because there's only so much you can get from vibes and friendships and family, right? Like there has to be something that anchors you through it all, right? And so those were some of the tangible things that definitely helped get me through.
So I wanted to ask you, what was that moment where you knew you were out of the trenches, basically? Like, what was that thing that happened? Was it this particular client? Was it this like fund that you got? Like, what was that moment where you're like, oh my goodness, I'm not down anymore?
So this story is so interesting of how I moved to Miami. So moved to Miami, $250 in the pocket, you know, living in a place that I didn't even know it was actually a project. I didn't realize that till later on after I got research, and, you know, I was like living with some other folks, and we like split up that place because we were all like trying to figure out how we were going to like literally afford to survive. And doing all of those networking events, you know, of course I'm meeting people, I'm talking about myself, like this is what I do, I'm passionate about technology. And the 3rd week, I would never ever forget this. It just so happened my account had just went negative. I mean, your girl only had $250, so eventually it was gonna run out. And bank account went negative, and there was a woman, it was so crazy. I walked up to this woman at a networking event, I was like, hi, I'm Ariana, I'm a software engineer. And she goes, wait, before you tell my story, there's somebody else here in Miami. I would love for you to meet at this networking event, but she's about to leave in a few minutes. Let's see if we can go catch her. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Right. Long story short, to fast forward, end up meeting this amazing person located here in Miami, and they got me connected. It was the 3rd week I was here in Miami, so the 3 weeks have already passed. And they end up getting me connected, and I end up getting a job and like landing a 6-figure position, which was like technically the most I had ever made, like I would say in my life, right? Because I think at the time I was 25 or whatever. And I mean, there were other businesses and stuff that I had before, but this would have been like that big break for me. Right. And so that was the light bulb moment that really transitioned everything. And since there, it's been, you know, a nonstop hustle. So
from there, how did we get from you landing that software development job to your current business right now?
Yeah, so really good question. So I did that. I served as a software engineer for a local company here in Miami and helped them develop a lot of strategy and execution around developing a mobile app for a real estate company. And so after that, I heard about an accelerator program called HF0. So it's a residency program for 12 weeks where they take 12 of the smartest software engineers from all around the world. We live in a house together for 12 weeks, and we essentially have to build our idea, whatever it is. And you only have 12 weeks to do it. and you're actually living in the house with 2 of your investors that invested in it. Yeah.
Wow.
So all of us got our first check ever. It was like $25K or something like that at the time. And this was all in 2021, right? So moved to Miami in May, and then I did this program starting in October, and it was finished in December. And so did that program, met some of the smartest engineers like in the world, and I was a part of that program. And that was a big, life-changing moment for me, because when you're a founder, if you can get into an accelerator, those are good ones, are really great opportunities to literally accelerate your growth. And that forever changed the game for me, because I was able to be in a space where, again, I went from, having a bunch of needs to that being provided for, to now having an opportunity to bring an idea to life, right? Like, sometimes I have to actually sit back and I'm like, majority, like not even 3% of the world gets to actually do that.
Right.
So, I went into the program knowing that I was going to give it my all. And I said, my goal is my goal is to raise at least $1 million. That's going to be the goal, just $1 million.
Right.
And we all know the story that ended up being very great. But that was the next step after, landing that position and then doing that accelerator that totally changed my life.
So after you finished the accelerator, that's when you went into, and from the accelerator you created
Mushi.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll talk about that. So I'm the founder and CEO of Mushi. We are a fine art NFT company that works with galleries, museums, and artists around the world, getting them into the Web3 space. And so for context, my background is software engineering. So I've been a software engineer since I was maybe like 17 years old. Which is typically rare for like women, and then even the statistics for Black women is even, lower, but it's okay. We're, recruiting and getting more women in tech from all different areas. And so, that program was super helpful, but also, and you can attest to this, the Miami ecosystem is just so good for taking talented people or people who are trying to figure out life and helping you discover, what that next step is, whether you're technical or not.
Right.
And so I really have to definitely shout out the Miami ecosystem, because there are so many people from, the Michelle Abbs of the world, the Brian Brakeens, the Jadon Johnsons, like, so many people who've been a part of my story that have supported me along this way this last 2 years. And then, of course, as a solo founder, I made history being the 4th Black woman in the world to raise over $1 million in Web3 and closing a seed round of $3.3 million. So that was like, an iconic moment. Yeah, we'll do a clap.
Every time she says it, I get chills. I'm like, yes.
God is good. And it's so interesting. Somebody pointed out to me yesterday, it was like, you had like 3.3, and the number 3 is like, a good number, right? Like in the Christian faith, obviously it represents God and stuff like that. So it's all been a testimony for sure.
So could you talk I just want to talk a little bit more about in regards to raising and how you did that, right? Because we always hear people like, I've raised this money, but there's so much that goes into raising and so many different types. And then it's like crowdfunding and then, all these different things. So can you just touch a little bit? Again, it's very extensive. We don't even have the time to fully go in on how to do that. But could you just talk a little bit about like how you were able to raise that and kind of some of those key points on how you were able to do that?
Absolutely. I think raising is very, very challenging. I think like some people think like, oh, it was easy for the crypto startups to raise, or it was easy for AI startups. And I'm like, no, like I talked to at least 150 people, like in a matter of like, a month or two, right? So like I remember my first week, like I talked to at least 70 people, like 70 different investors, and all from all around the world about the company and like what I was building. And so I think, if you're a founder and you're thinking about raising, there's so many pieces of advice that come to mind, but a few in particular are, make sure that you're fully committed and understand that that alone is a full-time job. And so you want to make sure that, you prepare your team to let them know like, hey, maybe I won't have as much time as I did last week because we need this capital in order to move forward. I think the second thing of tangible advice to give to founders is make sure that before you're reaching out to investors that you really look for investors that have a similar thesis. So an example is, if you are a technology company in Web3 or blockchain and AI, you probably don't want to go to an investor that only invests in like real estate and like consumer good products.
Yeah, you want to do your homework on that.
Do your homework, because I meet a lot of founders who have advice and they just talk to anyone that has money. I'm like, no, you need to narrow down your approach. So that was something that helped, but also understanding like it is hard for anybody who is raising.
Especially a Black founder.
But especially a Black founder, absolutely. But and I'll add a note to that. I think in order to raise and be successful, you also have to be an optimist. Because we know the statistics.
Right.
We know how hard it is.
They're this big.
They're that big, right? So, but with that being said, it doesn't mean that it's not possible. But it does mean that, you know, you just have to be super dedicated, but just know it's possible, you know, no matter what your background is or what you look like absolutely. But it is a challenge and it ain't easy for sure.
Right. So you raised, you know, 3.3 million.
Yeah.
Let's kind of fast forward to now. So what is your company now? What is your new like focus and goals? Because you have the capital, you have the team. Like, what is your next step in that?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're really excited right now. I'm doing a round of hiring. So follow me on Twitter, Ariana the Techie, because we definitely are hiring people right now. And you know, right now, you know, we're super excited because there's so much space and room for innovation in this world. The fine art world, which is, you know, one of my favorite things to say about it is, it's been the same industry for the past, 1,000+ years, like since before Jesus walking the earth, literally, it's not an exaggeration. And so there's so many different ways that we can innovate this space, right? Like before it was just like focusing on the fractionalization of art. But now it's like, okay, well, what about the analytics of it? And how do we provide more access for collectors who maybe can't afford $1 million painting, but they want to own a percentage of it? And so we're excited for some new and upcoming projects that we'll be announcing soon.
Yes. So what is your made it moment? What does that look like for you?
Future or past?
So in the past, what was your made it moment, like when you first started? And then right now, what is your made it moment?
I think the made it moment for me was when I got that first job offer. Like even before I had the idea for my current company, Mushi and Stuff Now, that was the made it moment because I had just went through 3 weeks of turmoil, right? And so to see something like that happen in a short amount of time through my persistence, regardless of how low I was and like literally at my bottom, that like gave me the energy I needed to be like, oh wait, no, like I'm that girl. Like I'm gonna figure this out through God. Period.
I'm that girl.
I'm that girl. So I was saying that was definitely the made it moment in the past. And even there are often times where, you know, I have to remind myself like, girl, like remember this was a prayer. Like this, like where you're sitting at and living at, like this was a goal for you that is tangible. Now we still gonna, you know, go to the next goal. But also, like, there are moments where I have to remind myself, like, take this in because, like, you did accomplish a lot.
Is it? I don't mean to cut you off.
Please.
Is it hard for you to be? Because I feel this way, where being grateful but also pushing forward. It's hard, and not saying we're ungrateful. I take that back. Right. Living in that moment and celebrating that, because I have such a hard issue with that. Like even I posted a couple weeks ago, I got my biggest brand deal that I've ever gotten. I had some other things, and my best friend was like, "Well, how are you going to celebrate?" And I'm like, I don't know, maybe go to dinner, but like I'm very big on executing and like I refuse to fumble when I finally get these opportunities. So I'm like, okay, I got it. Okay, let's execute it. And then maybe I'll celebrate after, but I'm like, nah, I want to make sure I execute. But I feel like I do struggle with celebrating myself in all the goals because then I'm like on to the next goal. And it's not necessarily about money or anything, but just like accomplishing the goals that like God put in my head to like execute. So do you struggle with that? Like celebrating yourself, but then it's like, okay, on to the next type of thing.
Yeah, you know, I think there's a healthy balance of that because, you know, in order to be the best, like, you know, most of us are critical and that will never leave. I think that, you know, that's what pushes us to believe that more can be done versus getting comfortable and be like, bet, well, I'm in Miami, I'm just going to be here forever and that's all I'm going to do, right? So I think that is a good thing. Now, where I've noticed through, you know, just like therapy and self-reflection is that also, you have to be able to manage it very well because that can also become like negative down talk and self-talk. And, you know, this world is already hard. Business is already hard. It's hard to hire. It's hard to find people to believe in your vision early, like when you're still trying to believe in a product or, you know, maybe you're in the middle of a depression, but God gave you an idea for a business and you have to muster up the strength to figure out how to execute. Right. So I think like, you know, you just kind of have to keep pushing forward. But you know, having that balance of making sure that you're not beating yourself up is so important. On the other flip side, I am finally, you know, realizing like how to enjoy the days. Because I used to feel like as a founder, like every day just had to suck, right? Like it just had to be like, if it wasn't a bad day, like not bad as in like, you know, somebody like did something crazy to you, but like, you know, that tiresome grind, which does exist. So I'm not taking that away, but I think you get what I mean on that healthy balance. And so, you know, being critical of yourself, I think, you know, it can be good in the sense of, you know, how you treat yourself and how you talk to yourself, because that's what pushes us. But definitely smelling the roses, I'm doing that more now, for sure.
I love that. Yeah, for this summer, I made a list of activities to do locally, a list of places I want to go in the U.S., and a list of places I'm going to go out the country. So I told myself, at minimum, we're going to do 1 or 2 of those activities every week. So like you said, like having stuff to look forward to, actually living, not just working, because it's our purpose. That's why I be telling people sometimes, for those who don't really necessarily like know their purpose yet or understand that, they're like, yo, all you do is work, but it's like, yes, I'm putting in work, but like I'm literally living my purpose. But sometimes we get so caught up in like I'm living my purpose, you're really not living. So I definitely feel like I'm slowly learning. I feel like I'm still kind of like struggling with that. But it's definitely important, and I'm making sure this summer that I'm going to be actually enjoying and like going and, you know, just doing different things and activities. But back to the original question, I did want to ask, what does success look like for you now?
Yeah, I think success looks like for me, it's such a good question, because I journal a lot, a lot. And I was kind of journaling about this like a week ago. And I think success for me now is a few things. One, I've learned that, you know, when you're moving so fast and you're very ambitious and you see where you're going to be in the future or desire to be, like, you also have to be honest with yourself about, you know, what are you willing to sacrifice in this life and what are you not, right? So, because in order to get success and what that vision is, you kind of have to figure out how to get there. In order to get there, there are decisions you need to make that are, you know, heavy ones and easy ones. And so success to me looks like, you know, being excited about, you know, building this company and taking it to the next level. Success to me is being excited to work with the people. And, you know, even though I'm the founder, you know, the people I hire, I'm like, I work for you. You know what I mean? Like, we're building this vision together. Like, how can I make your life easier so you can execute and meet the KPIs and goals? And then also for me, I want to have a fun personal life, right? Like, you know, having healthy relationships with my family, you know, falling in love, like those things are very important to me. And so, and having fun, like traveling and, you know, going to other countries and stuff like that. So success to me is, you know, scaling this company and, you know, having good relationships with the team and the investors, but also enjoying being in this physical body while I'm here on earth.
For everyone watching who wants to be a founder, who wants to be a successful business owner, what is the best piece of advice or experience, rather, that you can give for people who want to be successful like you?
Absolutely. I think the first thing is to really ask yourself, like, where do you actually want to be in 10, 20, 30 years, Lord willing, right? And so, because the best way to like get to even where I am right now is, you know, to think about the future and then work backwards. Like, even though maybe I didn't know I was going to raise exactly 3.3 million, but I knew I was going to be that founder that successfully raised VC and was able to, you know, grow a company and do great things with great people. So I think the first thing is, one, having that clear vision and write it down, make it plain as the word says.
Listen,
Habakkuk, okay?
I tell people,
Google
do
that scripture, it's a good
all
one.
the time.
Yes.
Write it down and work backwards. Like, you may not have all the tools, but, you know, we're all smart individuals. There's Google. There's certain steps you know that you have to do. Like, to create this, you need a videographer. You know what I mean? Like, you need a place, like certain things like that, and writing it down. Also, because just because God gives you a vision now doesn't mean it's supposed to happen now. And that's something I used to struggle with in the beginning. I'm like, well, you told me this, but I don't have the tools yet. And it's just like, I realized all the goals and things that I yearn for, I write it down, because your book is already written before you're born. You just have to go through the chapters to get there.
Absolutely.
But you don't know which chapter is going to be when. So I always just take a list of all the things that I want to do and yearn for, and then you'll know when it's time to focus on a goal or D goal based on like the tools that they give you. So I love that you said that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Writing it down and working backwards is because like, when you're gonna, like, I'm gonna have another low moment that may feel like this is the lowest of my life, right? Because especially like, as you grow and excel, when you succeed, the weight is heavy. You know, like, so I love comparing things to exercise, because fitness is very, very important to me in my life. And when you get stronger, like I remember when 8 pounds was like super heavy for me to do 20 reps or 30 reps. Now I'm, at 15-pound dumbbells and, can going up to 20 and 25. And so I think when you look at life from the perspective of, the future and being able to work back, it's gonna be hard, right? But that's kind of how you push through. And when you're in those low moments, that North Star, like when you believe it, and you're like, oh no, this is me. Because like you have to think about it, like oftentimes, like especially as founders, like we're very, again, less than like 3% of the world are actual like founders, let alone successful, right? So when you're on that track, you're already considered crazy compared to the rest of the world. So to me, I'm just like, well, if Elon Musk can believe he can, or Oprah can believe that she can, and Bill Gates believed that he could when they were 17, 18, 19, why is it insane for me to believe? And so I often also do tell people like the only difference between where you are and where you want to be is a series of decisions, right? And consistency. So that I think the biggest thing is the North Star. And then also, again, like, having God a part of your life is super important, because when people fail you, he never does.
Ooh, say that again.
Yes.
When people fail you,
God never does. He never does.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, I just want to play a quick little game because you are from Atlanta.
Okay.
ATL Shawty.
Oh, Lord, what we should have played.
So we're going to do a this or that.
This or that, okay.
This or, nothing crazy, just a this or that, okay?
Love it.
So this or that, lemon pepper dry wings or lemon pepper wet?
Wet.
Wet,
yeah.
Okay.
Lemon pepper wet wings, for sure.
American Deli or JR
American
Crickets?
Deli, baby.
American
You know. Okay. American Deli, for sure.
Okay, that was the easy one. Okay. Gucci or Young Jeezy?
I'm sorry. So I'm a Gucci fan since like 2005. Fun fact, most people are shocked, but like I know everything from like the trap house all the way to like 2023. Yeah. So I used to like study him in like middle school and high school. Yeah. So,
Listen,
yeah.
I saw him perform at Rolling Loud.
Oh, wow.
And I was in the photographer pit, and there was a point where he like looked at my phone. I was like, ah.
Oh, wow.
I love Gucci, but Young Jeezy is like.
Jeezy is lit though. Like I love Jeezy, but I'm a Gucci man. I love his wife Keisha. Like they're amazing.
Yeah, listen.
Yeah, she's a businesswoman. Like they got it
to the T. To the T. All right. Well, I appreciate you so much for coming on to the show. Do you want to tell people where to follow you?
Yes, you can follow me everywhere at Ariana the Techie, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, all the good stuff. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to the first episode of Chats with Ash. Make sure to follow and subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Leave some comments. I definitely look forward to the conversations that this conversation will drive, and we'll see y'all next time.